Carlee, you and I had many, many conversations over the years when you worked for Lafayette Consolidated Government. So I know you primarily from there and some of the other volunteer situations you've been involved in. But so for the folks who might be listening, they're like, who is Carlee Alm-Labar? So tell us a little bit about what you did with Lafayette Consolidated Government.
So I was hired in 2010 by then City Parish President Joey Durrell to work in his office. Actually replaced Ben Berthelot when Ben moved over to community development. And I was primarily responsible in the beginning for communications, things like press releases and helping Joey prepare for presentations and that sort of thing. But as I got into the role, it was right about the time that the comprehensive planning process kicked off. And so I think Joey felt strongly that initiative was led out of the mayor's office. And so I became his point person on that initiative. Yeah. And so, that was a great experience because I learned a lot about community planning in a very short amount of time.
Sounds like there were kind of some crash courses.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, that position, I held that position for about 4.5 years as just technically his assistant and maintained the communications role, but then also added some of the plan coordination role to it. And handled a variety of special projects while I was in that role. And then the final year, under his term, I was the chief development officer because at that point, we had adopted the comprehensive plan, Plan Lafayette. We were writing the Unified Development Code. And so I guess that was 2015. I was the chief development officer and was coordinating development issues across departments and then also helping to adopt and implement the Unified Development Code.
Now, when I think about Unified Development Code, for some reason, I automatically think of Central Pizza downtown. I don't know why, only because now it's different because they have a new kind of extended patio. There's a parking space that has been inhabited now by chairs. And
right.
It's a place for people to go and gather and really be downtown.
Yeah. So I think, there's a lot of, I guess, misinformation and confusion about what the Unified Development Code did
I think that's very true.
Versus what the comprehensive plan did versus what we've done after. And so this is a great point for me. I love this quote from my exactly. When I worked for Joey Durrell, one of the favorite things that he would say when he was just trying to explain government to folks is he said, "Look, if I moved to a desert island tomorrow with 20 of my friends, we would end up with a government because somebody would pee on my tomatoes."
That's right. I love that. Yes.
And so,
because we're people,
we're people,
humans.
right?
Yeah,
and
we get in each other's way. And
yes, and we need rules, and we need.
And we have these ideas, but it may not be the same idea as the guy next to us. Yeah.
So the Plan Lafayette was a policy document with action items that, we spent the years afterwards implementing. And in fact, right now they're in the process of updating the plan. And, we did a lot of things to follow through on those things. And really all of the action items came from feedback from the community. That then fed into the Unified Development Code. And what some people do, I think people in the industry understand, but others don't. We had a whole series of what was called subdivision regulations and zoning regulations that we've been operating under, since the 1970s.
Years. I was going to say, it had been a long time.
Yes. Yeah. And so one of the purposes of the Unified Development Code was to combine those regulations and then to also get rid of some antiquated regulations and basically to update them. I think that one of the major benefits to that process was that it taught us and taught many of the folks working in government that your regulations need to change and update with your community.
That's right.
The regulations that we had in 1970 don't need to be the same regulations that we have today, and then the same regulations that we have in another 40 years. Some of them are too lax and some of them are too strict. And both can be true. If you have ever watched a city parish council meeting and you've seen angry neighbors come to the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
In those cases, what they're really saying is the regulations aren't strict enough.
Right.
And in other cases, there are situations where we're saying, okay, the regulations aren't relaxed enough. You know, if you talk to a developer and talk to them about some of the costs that
they're like,
the costs that they incur, and that can be a situation where they're too strict. And so what I found that we learned during the process of rewriting our development regulations was that, you know, we needed to really pay attention to where there were places where our regulations had been outdated and we needed to update. And look, I think that we still have room. And that's one of the things
I was going to ask you. Is it kind of like a living, breathing part of government?
I think communities should view, you know, you can't have your regulations changing so much that people can't depend on them.
Okay.
Right? Like, so, you know, I think, you know, I'm in the development community now, and you can't feel like the sands are shifting.
Right. Yeah.
The sands can't be shifting under you all the time. But as a government, or in my case later as a person in the planning department, you also have to be looking really seriously at what doesn't make sense or how we can grow better as a community. So for instance, if you think about and we've updated our regulations to reflect this, you know, the closer that you are to the downtown area, maybe the less parking that you might need, because residences and businesses and shopping are closer to one another. Whereas you go out into the Ambassador Caffrey and Carlee Saloon area and you need parking. No one is walking to, no one's walking, or very few are walking to Whole Foods to get their groceries, you know, so you may need,
not in the June heat. You know,
so you may need different regulations out in that area than you have closer to downtown. And I think when we did the UDC and some of the subsequent amendments that we made after that, we tried to say, look, one size doesn't fit all in every place in our community. And you'll see that reflected in some of our regulations. I think that continuing to improve those regulations, but doing so in a way that the development community can still know what to expect and know what they can depend on is critical. And so I don't think that we're done there. I think that the work is just beginning, because that is one of the ways that communities stay competitive, is they have rules that reflect their priorities and rules that are fair to the development community. You know, when you mention Central Pizza and the Parklet, that wasn't directly part of the UDC, but that was a project that we worked on, looking at best practices in other communities and things that
what works elsewhere can be implemented here.
Things that other communities have done to say, like, look, we want more vibrancy on our streets downtown. One of the ways that we can do that is we can allow businesses to have an agreement where they build out their parking spaces, and here's all the protections we put in place to make that possible. And then, you know, it's another way that we, you know, the phrase in the planning world that I've learned over the last few years is it brings life to the street. So it makes your downtown more vibrant.
More vibrant. Yeah. It attracts more people.
So, you know, people like to watch other people. So you put people dining out on the street on Jefferson. It's just another thing to look at.
Another option. Yeah. And business people, and, you know, who are working on their businesses or renovating or whatever the case may be, and developers, they really need to stay in contact with the people that are in government to express what their needs may be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that's, you know, when I was the planning director, that was something that I just always wanted people talking to me about, like, what are the problems that you're running up against? If I can fix them, I used to tell people, I will do everything I can for you, but I will not break the law for you.
Right.
But if one of the things that you come to me with is a reason that this particular law is broken for you or for everyone, we will work and we will talk about how that law can be changed or why it shouldn't be changed. Because I think that that's, you know, what we want from our government is them to be responsive and responsible. And I think that, you know, you can set that tone, and you can be that kind of person, and you can have that kind of government.
Have you always been so open-minded? Did you get that from your parents too? Because, you know, the big thing I think that it sounds like you know how to do is to listen. And in our world, I mean, right here, we're talking on a talk station. So it's people talking all the time.
You know, I do try to listen. I probably listen more than I talk. I'm generally someone who, you know, I would much rather be listening to you today than talking myself.
So it's not something you normally like to do a lot of.
Right.
Right.
You can learn so much by listening to people. And sometimes, sometimes they're telling you exactly what they mean. Mm-hmm. Sometimes what they really mean is behind what they say. Right. And so you have to listen because, sometimes they're telling you what their fears are or what they're mad about, but they may not be expressing it in a way that you can help them, which is why listening is so important. So, I don't know really. It's funny when you ask that question. I don't know any other way to be other than to try to listen.
Do you have siblings?
No, I'm an only child.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. But it sounds like if you did, you would have been the one breaking up the disputes. You were like Switzerland or something.
I had coworkers who used to call me Switzerland because I was always trying to hear both sides of an issue.
I did not look that up either. I did not know that.
Right.
Okay, this is interesting.
I am always. It is very easy for me to relate to people's frustrations on both sides of an issue and help. I'm always trying to help people understand where the other person is coming from. That's just something that
part of your personality.
Yeah, part of
your character.
Right.
Carlee Alm-Labar is joining us to talk a little bit about herself, her thoughts, and kind of some of the things she's been involved with before and moving to Lafayette and really just falling in love with this area and staying here. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the other half of Carlee on the way. And I want to know the love story. So we've got more with Carlee Alm-Labar on the way.